Okay, so it's 7:01. I will go ahead and get started. Thanks for everyone joining us online. Just some preliminary items to take care of. This is Arthur Frontczak. I'm the chair of the advisory committee. I want to start by just confirming that folks are here, that we intended to, and we have a quorum. So members, when I call your name, please respond in the affirmative if you are here with us. Brian, I believe, is not. Okay. David is here. We're just talking to Dave. So can you confirm, David?
I'm here.
Awesome. Jackie Katz?
Here.
Jonathan Hurwitz?
Here.
Kristen Baelish?
Excuse me, Kristen had indicated that if she was able to come tonight, it would be around 8.
Okay. Mike Hope?
Huff here.
Huff, sorry, Mike. Thank you, Huff. Susan Klein?
Here.
And did I miss anybody? Okay, great. And of course, I am Arthur Frontczak. Now, from a staffing side of the equation, we have our assistant, Susan Jacobson. Yes?
Yes.
Wonderful. I believe we also have Todd with us.
I'm here.
Fantastic. Thank you, Todd, Norfolk Finance Director. And we have Blythe with us, our town administrator. Yes, Blythe?
Hi, Arthur. Yes.
And I also believe, do we have is Jay on the line with us today, Jay Tolliver?
No, I did invite, I just let him know that we were meeting. I did copy him.
That's fine. That's fine. I just wanted to recognize him in case that he was. And we will get to tonight's agenda. So the agenda for tonight is we are going to review the warrant, vote on articles, have a budget discussion, I believe, about DPW tonight, and approve minutes. And actually, I forgot to make an introduction. So from DPW tonight, we have whom, Susan?
Barry, I don't want to butcher his last name, so I'll let him tell us.
No problem. So it's LaRiviere. Barry LaRiviere is here.
Thank you for joining us, Barry.
Not a problem.
Outstanding. So in terms of the warrant articles, I believe we're not really going to go over those tonight. It's really just a DPW presentation as it relates to the budget. Correct, Susan?
Yes, and then at the end of our meeting, I'll just kind of give everybody an update on who's coming in next week and then who's coming in the following week.
Excellent. I will start my video. There we go. So it's not just great. So in terms of the budget, let me share out the actual sheet. Everyone should have gotten that as an attachment. When we're completed with the budget presentation, I will go ahead and open it up for questions from the committee, after which I will open it up to questions from the public or anyone who happens to be joining us. Hold this up here. Budget info, there we go. Okay, so I believe I have the budget handout in front of everyone now. And Barry, if you could just orient us to the document, at least to the DPW portion.
I think Todd can do that better. I have a paper copy. I think it's a little ways down.
Okay, let me go here. I'm on page 3. Is that correct?
It starts at the bottom of page 2, then goes to page 3.
Bottom of page 2, Public Works. I see it. Okay, thank you. Okay, so if you could just give us your overview and your perspective on this, Barry, that would be very helpful.
Yeah, so what we initially started is this being a new process for the DPW for myself. Myself and the staff sat down and pretty much went through our budget line by line, adjusting things that were maybe traditionally a little bit low, maybe a traditional a little bit high, just creating a overall more concise budget. Todd and I were working this afternoon on nailing down some of the salaries. There were some adjustments there that we had to take care of. We did a good job of that. I think mainly overall, it was just a lot of, minute tweaks just to make the budget a lot more tighter and concise than it had been in the past.
Okay, so appreciate that. Our dedicated representative who focuses on our committee on DPW stuff is Mr. Lutz. David, did you have any perspectives you wanted to share on the DPW?
I haven't taken a long look at it. Barry, I have a quick question. I'm sorry to ask this question. Are you the acting or the permanent?
I'm the interim director right now.
Okay. So your salary assumption, which is minus 25%, is that based on not getting a new director until the end of the fiscal year, or what's that?
I'd like to weigh in on all that when I can have a chance, please.
Okay, Blythe, certainly.
I think it would be helpful to provide some overall context.
Yeah.
So, because Barry's done a great job of working on putting this together with Todd, but I think overall it's important to note that right now the DPW budget is reduced from the current year by 3.4%. And it reflects a lot of changes that have been happening there.
It's not new.
Some retirements in the last 2 years that have changed things, most recently by Bob McGee, the director, December. And that's correct, Barry is in an interim role at the moment. When we went through the budget with the selectmen, our original goal was to redirect some of those salaries to where we thought they would be better utilized the department going forward. We'd identified that we had a lack of adequate staff in the grounds division. We had more hours of work that we need to get done each season, each year, than we had hours of staff to do it. And our original proposal to add one person in that role, not to fill the superintendent position that had been in charge of vehicle maintenance and transfer station, redeploy those dollars to a new person, full-time in the summer, summer help, college kids, if you will, for about 12 or so weeks a year, and to add a little salary in the area of folks that are acting as assistant foremen right now in the various divisions, having them be able, as they're trained and prepared to step up to foreman, be able to handle things on the ground more day to day. When we took that to the select board, in part in the context of filling the DPW director position, it was the consensus of a majority of the board that they felt in a town of our size, we didn't necessarily need as much staff at the top. And so the first budget we put together, which included the director, assistant director, and one superintendent, where we used to have 3, I think, in the past, we would have 1 now. They actually asked us to go back and look at it with just 2 people. So the budget that you see here includes a DPW director at a salary range, is a top salary, which I think is, we'll fill within that amount, maybe a little less. A position below that, and that's not exactly defined, but it's being carried as what the current assistant director salary is. So in a sense, we eliminated money for a superintendent altogether, and we have to rethink exactly what those roles are and how they're laid out. But it would fulfill 2 people. It keeps money in for a new grounds position, but we also, in trying to continue to balance the budget, since the last selectmen's meeting, we've taken out the 2 summer people. Barry is correct that they did a very thorough job of going line by line in all the divisions and looking for places where there were perhaps budgeted more than they needed to in past years, and areas where they were light, and trying to realign those and also reduce where they could. So I just felt that everyone understand that's where we stand at the moment. And when Barry and I met this morning to go over it in more detail, what I think we would both agree in saying is that DPW can get the work done and manage the projects with two people, but it will not necessarily give us the ability to be as proactive as we'd like to be or think we should be. But, we will be able to get the work done, if you will. And I'll just make a broad statement there. So I just wanted to have everyone to have that overview. Thank you.
That's very helpful, Blythe. Thank you. David, any other follow-on questions that you had? And you are muted. Let me unmute you.
Yeah, reductions in the administration budget. And I can't scroll on this, so I don't know what's coming down below, but are they all encompassed in this consolidation that you were discussing, Blythe, or is there,
So we have
what's the reduction? Is there a reduction in staffing, or is it a consolidation, or do you understand what I'm saying?
I think it's a bit of both. I would also say that we have made a internal decision to shift, based on the responsibility and the workload, shift a small amount of the cost over to the water division, the enterprise fund. But I'm actually going to kick it over to Barry to tell me at the end of the day how many actual FTEs we would have compared to what we had in FY20.
Thank you.
I just don't have that factoid off the top of my head.
Barry, if you could chime in.
What was that question, Blythe? I missed that one.
So with these changes in going from, a superintendent, an assistant, and a director, adding a grounds person and so on, where are we overall in the FTEs in DPW compared to the current year? I just have lost track of that detail.
Yeah, I don't have that one with me either. I did not bring with that. I could circle back with you guys on that one tomorrow.
I would like that as soon as I can.
Yep, not a problem. I don't have one. I don't have that with me right now.
Okay, yes, if you could follow up by email, that would be great. So is it fair to characterize the budget as level service?
It is our attempt to maintain level service. There's a few things my goal when we did the budget was not to cut anything out. There may be less of things that we could do for example, the line striping. Instead of doing the whole entire town, we might have to do a little bit less than the whole entire town, but nothing in our budget is getting taken out. The services will still be provided.
Okay, so just to say that back to you. So your goal was to reduce costs where possible without eliminating any services altogether.
Absolutely.
Okay,
The other
understood.
thing I would like to, I failed to mention earlier, was when we discussed internally removing one of the quote management level positions, we identified that with the amount of road work that we're planning to do and hopeful that Chapter 90 money will go up, has been thought about pre-COVID-19 virus pandemic, that if we were to have one less person, one of the areas we felt would be difficult was with street inspections, both work of our own streets that we're replacing or resurfacing, but also we've got at least one subdivision, and as you know, eventually those roads become the towns, and it's important to have somebody on the ground watching some of that construction, making sure that those are being done to our standards. As we took out a position, we actually did add into an expense line, I think engineering, $20,000 to be able to contract out that work to an outside person to come in and do that work that we would have done ourselves. Thanks.
Okay, very good. Any other comments or perspective that you'd like to share on your department's budget, Barry?
No, like I said, I think Blythe summed it up pretty well. The management side isn't optimal. We'd love to have another person there to help us out, but we'll be able to get done what we need to get done with the staff that we have.
Okay.
Hey, Arthur,
excellent.
I think David was trying to make a point. He's just on mute.
Okay, David, yes.
And now I've forgotten my point, but shoot. Thank you, Kevin. You saw my finger waving. I think it had something to do with the, shoot, I can't remember. I'm sorry.
No, it's fine. I'll buy you some time here. So this is a new format that we're all getting used to. Other people have helped me set settings as best as I'm able to and shared advice. Kevin in particular. Thank you, Kevin. I am getting used to watching the raise hand feature, which I strongly recommend that people use. I am watching that right now. So if you would like to speak, please raise your hand. Again, right now we're focusing on the advisory committee members themselves. However, I will open it up here in a minute to anyone who would like to ask questions about the topic at hand, the DPW budget. So again, if you can find the group icon, the managed members, you'll be able to raise your hand, which Susan just did. Yes, Susan.
Last meeting, you mentioned that you were going to bring it before the select board about reducing the cost by changing it from stickers to bags and a few other things. Blythe, do you know how that all came down?
Oh, thank you, Susan. That's a great question. So yes, we went over that with the select board, and I think Barry and I would characterize it as they were generally supportive of the changes. We didn't ask them to vote on it. There was one specific question for us to go back and look at how much we would charge for providing resin with a roll-off container, and that maybe that was a little low. So our plans are to go back to the board at one of the meetings in April and ask them to approve those changes. And as a result, we have adjusted our revenue projections slightly. We had lowered it to 300,000 for revenue next year initially, and with the changes they've asked for, and perhaps we may see an increase in people wanting to use the station given where the economy may be going. We raised it to 310,000 for next year in the budget that we're working on, this week. That's the overview I think you're looking for.
Okay. Does that answer your question, Susan?
Arthur, I'm looking for my hand thing and I can't find it.
Okay, well, in the meantime, I will bring your video window up and just wave your finger. There
I
you are.
just did. Where's my hand raising thing? There it is. Okay, no. Following up on that, Blythe, I went to the dump today and we're throwing everything into one plastic thing and one glass thing. And next week, there won't be any of that. Is that anticipated in next year's budget? Because that's going to be all disposal, not recycling.
I think Barry could handle that, but overall, this is a short-term situation as we get through the virus.
Short term.
Short-term, because we may, Barry, do you want to handle this one?
Yeah, so we decided to basically expedite the process of the transfer station. We've gone to single stream. Today, we were allowing people to throw some of their recycling away because not everybody was notified of what was going on. Starting Saturday, we're really going to phase it out. We just want people to come to the DPW to a transfer station to throw away trash in bags with a bag sticker on it. So we're going to basically fill up our existing dumpsters with trash and haul them away as needed. This is to promote the whole social distancing and increase the time, limit the time that people are at the DPW so we can get people in and out quicker.
I appreciate that. I was wondering what the revenue impacts going forward. So
it's not going to be a huge issue. I think Blair and I did some rough numbers the other day. It might cost us an extra couple thousand right now just to get rid of the single stream. Obviously, we won't be getting any revenue on the recycling side of things right now. But going forward, if we implement everything that we discussed with the Board of Selectmen a couple of weeks ago, we should see an increase in our revenues over there. That is our long-term goal.
Okay, that's good to know. Thank you. There's a couple of hands up. Let me go with Kevin, who's been waiting the longest. Kevin, go ahead.
I raised my hand to identify how to raise your hand. All you do is scroll your mouse to the bottom. A toolbar will pop up. One of those options will be participants. If you click on
Ah.
participants, a pop-up window will come up, and on the bottom right-hand side of that window will be raise your hand.
Thank you, sir.
He has the power.
Quite
Thank you, Kevin. Blythe, you wanted to add something.
I knew
I
that
just wanted
once.
to add to what Barry has said. I would think we figure this will cost us about $1,000 a week right now to not recycle. And we are a little bit concerned that some of these recycling companies might possibly shut down. So, it would be lovely if everyone was able to save their recycling and bring it to us later. That's, not necessarily possible. So Barry's reasons are right on point, and we are hoping that as soon as things let up, we can reinstitute recycling.
Very good. Thank you for that extra context. Okay, advisory committee members, any other questions before I open it up to the general viewing audience? Okay, waiting patiently. Ed, if you could go ahead and ask your question.
Thank you. My question has to do with revenue. It came up just briefly just now, but is there revenue that's not reflected in this budget that the transfer station generates that is a hidden benefit that we're not seeing?
Either Barry or Blythe, did you have a perspective on that?
I didn't quite get the whole thing. I got a little bit of revenue and something hidden. I didn't get the whole question.
So I think the question is there additional revenue which is not reflected on this sheet? Is that correct, Ed?
Yes, yeah.
I would answer it that the answer is no. I mean, the revenue projection of 310,000 includes the sale of decals to use the station, the sale of what we imagine is going to be bags rather than stickers, the revenue from recycling, the revenue from renting roll-off containers, and what we hope will be a larger revenue stream. We will be selling some of the materials that we haven't been as advertised as prominently in the past, so that wood chips and screen posts,
Wood chips,
people
mulch.
can take advantage of it at a better price than they could get in the local market.
So I guess my point is that revenue, whatever the number is not reflected here. Is that correct?
It would go straight into the general fund.
Correct. So it's not reflected in, it doesn't net down any of these expenses. That's my point.
That's correct.
Okay. So there is a side benefit there that we're not seeing that does offset some of these expenses.
Yes,
Yep.
but overall, it costs more. It will still cost more to run the transfer station.
Understand? Yeah.
Well, bringing in revenue. We're simply trying to close the gap.
Yeah. Understand. No, I understand that. So, but there is a benefit that we're just not seeing here. That's all. That's my point.
Yep, that is correct.
Okay, thank you. Other questions from guests online? Todd, yes.
So with respect to that, the benefit not being seen, that's actually on the revenue page. We're on the expenses page, two different things. So on the revenues page, which is up to the top, first one, you'll see it listed there, transfer station revenue, 310,000. So it is included, but it's part of revenues. It's not listed in the expenses. There's nothing hidden here.
Yeah, I see a transfer station here.
I wasn't hidden in derogatory manner. It was just, it wasn't apparent with the sheet we were looking at.
Understood, but I'm just letting you know that we incorporated it. That's all.
Okay. Thanks for directing it to where it does in fact appear. Appreciate that, Todd. Other questions? Okay, I see no hands up, so I believe this concludes the DPW section of our budget review. You're actually our first, so thank you very much, Barry, for being our test loaf in the oven. So
I think it went pretty well. If my kids and the dog would start running around, it'd be great. But what can you do?
nice. Susan has a question. Yes, Susan.
Just a point I'd like to try to make. when you share your screen with us, we can't actually toggle between pages. So unfortunately, I can only see the page that you're on. So it may actually, just a point going forward, and I understand paper waste and all that. I totally get it. But sometimes we have to figure out a different way. It may make more sense either for everyone to have shared the document and they can move around on their own screens, or to have printed it out, because in all honesty, also the font is way too small for me to see, and I'm not able to zoom it. So I can't see anything. I can see the colors, but I really can't see the numbers when you're on a page like this. So for me, it doesn't work. It may work for everybody else, but I would like to just suggest that either we each open up our own. I mean, it's fine for the general public who don't get access to these prior, but for us, we should either open up our own on our own computer screen or print them out ourselves. Just because I can't do anything. Like when he was speaking, I couldn't follow along with what he was doing because it won't let me actually, move around. You have to move it around for us. So
Yeah, that's an excellent point, Susan. And in fact, my preference would be for me not to centrally have to share it. I would much rather give the access to the presenters such that they could then scroll us through at their own, that way they can point at things and such. Kevin, I don't know if you have any perspective or if you've gotten that much experience on document sharing yet. Not that I want to turn the official town meeting here into the committee meeting into a Zoom tutorial, but it would be helpful to get feedback so folks can follow along as best as we can.
Sure. I think Sue might have had something she wanted to add from an administrative standpoint first, and I'll be happy to add context on top of that from a functionality standpoint.
Sure. Go, Sue.
Thank you, Kevin. I just want to make sure did everybody get this? I sent this to everybody today, and I sent the school package for next week. So I think that's a great point, Sue, that maybe people have to print it out.
yeah, I didn't mean that I didn't receive it. I'm sorry if that came across that way. I actually did receive it, but I knew from last week's meeting that Arthur had said he was going to do the screen sharing. So I didn't want to waste the paper printing it out. But now that it's been shared and we've tried that, I just wanted to give my feedback. And I tried, in case you saw me leave for a little while, I actually tried to find it in my email and open it. But again, with the way it works with the screen sharing, it opens them both up of equal size. So I'm really just the same.
Yeah.
No, but I think that's a great point, because next week's presentation from the schools is going to be considerably larger.
Right.
And so I think that, if copying at home is a problem, I'm certainly happy to go in to the office in my protective gear and make copies for everybody and leave them. Although, I could put them in the, find someplace or come up with even like I have kind of an old fashioned milk crate with a top that I could leave documents in for everybody to take a copy.
I don't personally mind either printing it or just opening it up on my screen and then following through and able to make it as big as I need it and, get it out of the way when I need it. I just wanted to give that feedback. I'm only speaking for myself, Arthur, by the way. I'm not speaking for anybody else. I personally am having a little bit of trouble following along with.
Understood. Well, thank you for that, Susan. I have a couple of hands that are up. Let me go with Mike here first. Go ahead, Mike.
Yeah, a quick question, because I don't think we talked about town vehicle fuel, which is these fixed costs. And I went up 11%. I'm just curious what's driving that. So that's my first question. And then my second maybe comment to Todd and Blythe is we're still talking about the budget numbers and don't have any actual numbers. Even if we've got year-to-date numbers, I feel like it's helpful in reviewing these.
So I can answer the town fuel. So what we found when we were analyzing our past budgets, that town fuel was usually underfunded. So it was always an expense at the end of the year. So we tried to raise that up a little bit to be more in line with what was actually spent every year for town fuel. So that's why the increase is there.
Okay, thank you. We now have David with his hand up. Go ahead, David.
I was just going to follow on what Sue said, is that I have that document, I have the full document open behind this screen, which I cannot access without logging out of this program, and had reviewed it and was ready to ask some questions. And that's the issue, is that you put it up and we can't scroll through it. So it's printing it out. If that's the painful other choice, that's the way we're gonna have to go. But
Yes, I think that's going to make the most sense, because no matter who's presenting, whether it's the schools coming, they're going through their presentation, when they're
I
controlling
understand.
yeah, so.
I wanted to echo on what Sue, I was about to say what she said until she said it so articulately. So it's funny because I spent some time reviewing the document and then boom, I'm stuck on the first page. So.
Okay. So appreciate folks' input on how that's going. Got a couple hands up here. Blythe, go ahead.
I'm just responding to Mike's second question, which was about asking for historical information. We sent out the revenues earlier this week, and I just remind everybody that the expense side, at least for the prior years, is in the budget book. If it's helpful, we can send it out again. And it probably would be helpful to have a, at least maybe a I think mid-year is already in the budget book, but if you'd like an update to closer to where we're going to be deciding the budget, I'm sure we can get that to you as well.
Okay, thank you, Blythe. Appreciate that offer. Go ahead, Kevin, you had your hand up.
So very quickly, from a best practice standpoint, clearly sharing spreadsheet or small text via the share screen function within Zoom is not preferable for the reasons that Susan had cited, the inability to scroll and in some cases the scale of the text. What we found is that when you're presenting a PowerPoint presentation, something with slides in a presentation format, it's more suited for that. If you are sharing something that gets into detail of an Excel sheet of something of that nature, it's better to send that out to the group beforehand. And then you can take your window that you're looking at the videos of each participant. You can go to the left-hand side of it, click it, and drag it to the right. That'll give you one column, and then you can keep your spreadsheet that you're reviewing to the left side of that, so that your screen is taken up mostly by the content that's being discussed, as opposed to the individual videos of the speakers. The only person that really needs to see all the speakers at one time is the host, so that he could identify hands being raised and who's muted and whatnot. At least that's how we've seen it work best.
Okay, good. Thank you. Yeah, in fact, mid-meeting here, I've actually logged in twice. You'll see my name here twice. That's because I now have my iPad's open where I can see everyone's faces and the controls and screen and share documents are on my computer. So yeah, we'll definitely take some figuring out. Great. So I think, thank you, Kevin, for that. I'll lower your hand. I see no other hands raised regarding the DPW. So I will excuse our guests. Thank you again so much, Barry.
Thanks for having me. I enjoyed it.
And okay, so we'll go to the next item on our agenda, which Susan, I believe we want to talk about scheduling, correct?
Yes, please. So next week we are having both schools, King Philip and Norfolk schools presenting. The following week we will have Chief Stone and Mr. Haddad and a second gentleman whose name I cannot come up with right now will be joining us to discuss the citizens petition. Kristen had made a request that we invite them in to hear their reasons for submitting the petition so that we could get all sides, if you will. So I'm hoping to have them in the week after next. So that would be April 8th, I think.
Is that the citizens' petition that alters the way the board appointments occur?
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
So thank you for running down the schedule for us. Can you also share recent developments regarding town meeting, Susan?
Sure. So town meeting date has been changed, and at the select board meeting last night, I believe they voted to move forward with the change. Our election is going to take place on June 2nd. Our town meeting will take place on June 9th. And if we need a second meeting, it will happen on June 11th. So I just, for anybody that may not be available, if you could let me know sooner rather than later for either one of those dates, just so we can keep that in mind when assigning articles, where we're doing this all a little differently this year than other years, doing it all by Zoom. I think it would be helpful if we knew that beforehand.
Susan, what was the second date? Oh, the 11th of June?
Yes,
Second night? Okay, thank you.
okay.
Updating my calendar here. Thank you for that, Susan. Any questions about the schedule coming up? I see Blythe has raised her hand. Yes, Blythe.
No question about the schedule. I will be getting back to working on the warrant a little bit more in the next week or two, I hope. But I just wanted, if you would like at some point, you know, that we have made adjustments to the budget that we're continuing to refine every week. And I'll be going back to the board with what this looks like. But if you'd like me to give you a very quick overview of what's changed since you saw it the last time tonight, I'd be happy to do that.
Sure. I mean, I would find that helpful. Any other comments on whether that would be helpful or not?
I guess, what does that mean? Is it going to change after this, or is this an
Well,
evolving thing, or?
Evolving, I think, is a very good word. At the last meeting, the board, you know, expressed, you seem to be generally supportive of the transfer station changes, which you see in this budget, but less supportive, no decision made definitely about where we stand on changing retiree health insurance, which we had targeted as a $120,000 deduction in the budget. So we've been moving ahead with changes in the budget to assume that the retiree health insurance rates would not change. And so that's why the budget that you see here is, instead of being down by, instead of being an increase of 2.33%, it's actually an increase of 2.42%. And not to get into super detail, there are three modest revenue changes to the budget in the transfer station, ambulance receipts, and an adjustment in free cash. And then to balance it, we've had reductions in DPW that we've talked about tonight, a reduction in finance for some hours in the assessor's office we won't need. The school Norfolk Public Schools has offered up a reduction of $30,000. We've asked for reductions in library, in police departments, so that we could get to a balanced budget, and that's what is here today. I would tell you that it is still evolving. We need to go back to the board and show them what this looks like at their next meeting on April 7th. And we're still assessing whether they'll be open to some change on retiree health insurance or not. And this week, we're sending out the letters to all employees who have health insurance, asking who would be interested in taking the buyout, which would help us reduce our health insurance expenses. So it is a little bit in flux right now. And tomorrow I have a MEC board meeting, because there is a strong interest by the state to have us add 2 towns to the MEC, Mendon and Millville. And that may have some positive effects on our budget over the next couple of years. I don't have enough details to give you that yet. And I don't think, even if I did, it would be able to affect us passing the budget in June, but it may help long term. So as much as I like to nail this all down and not have it keep moving around, there are a couple changes we still are tracking, and I'll get those to you as soon as we know them. Thanks.
Very good. Thank you for that update. Okay, Susan, any other items on our agenda? I know we're not going to do minutes tonight. We've talked about the schedule. We've had our DPW overview. One question that I have for you, Susan, is with town meeting being pushed back, and this might also be a Blythe question too, I want to have enough time to get to what we need, but now that town meeting's been pushed back for I think that's 4 weeks, Are we too early? Should we push some of these meetings back? I don't want to be in a position where we're discussing something which then will change, requiring people to come back in again. Why there, Susan? Any comments on that?
I don't think there's a reason to have people necessarily back in again. I mean, I think it's important on April 7th that we be able to confirm with the select board where they stand on retiree health. Either it's a change or it's not a change. And that is a major driver. We probably won't know the answer to people who are going to all the people who could opt out from health insurance until probably late May, because that ties in with a timing for renewal of insurances for the following year. So that's probably the only late breaking news we would have. Otherwise, I think these numbers are going to be fairly well as they are.
Okay, Susan, you also wanted to share?
So I don't think there's any harm in continuing the schedule at this point, because I think that depending upon how long this virus keeps people working remotely and has us doing some things differently, we may need that extra time towards the end to get product done. I don't know if we're going to have printers open, for example, till the bitter end. I don't, there's some things that come into play outside of just what we're doing. So I think I would feel a little more confident if I had some more time at the end to work with Blythe in case we find ourselves in a position where we're running into that issue.
Makes perfect sense. Kristen, you wanted to share something, I believe?
All good.
Oh, you're all set. Okay, David. Oh, hang on, David. Let me unmute you.
Issue is there a way to track that through what the impact's going to be to the rest of the departments? So specifically the schools. I'm sorry, I'm doing this because I'm not in a meeting room, but it's an up and down thing. I mean, if we don't do that, what are the impacts going into the schools? What are the impacts going to all the other departments? I'd like to know that, and I'm hoping the selectmen have that in front of them when they make their decision. Does that make sense?
I think I feel like I might have missed the first part of your.
So the selectmen are going to make a decision on whether the retiree,
Right.
the increase in the retiree copay is on or not. And I'd like to know what the ripple effect of that is on the rest of the budget, like spelled out, what that's going to mean to all the various departments, maybe specifically the schools, but also all the other departments. And I'd like to see that before the selectmen make that decision.
Well, I can answer that to some extent now. We had put in front of them a proposal that if we changed the retirees' share of the cost share, their premium share from 35% of the premium monthly to 50, which is the highest we can go under state law, we calculated that out based on the retirees we have today. That would be worth $120,000 in the budget. So if they expressed that was a quite a large amount, they wanted us to look at options. So, for example, one option could be if they wanted to not make such a drastic change and they were interested in a 5% change, so it's 60-40 rather than 35-65, that would probably be worth about $40,000. So I can't tell you until then if they're comfortable with that, what we might put back in a department budget.
Okay.
So it seems like because the extent of the buyback potential won't be known until the end of May, that there might be some last minute motions just before town meeting that we'll need to convene to then discuss. Blythe, is that fair?
Well, I think we can do it one of two ways. We can either have last minute motions, or we can simply wait till the fall and know that if we had to, we don't know what this economy will really pan out to be, and adjustments at the state level. It's, not so naive to not think that things the landscape may change. And so if we realize that we could have saved, say, $25,000, then that's simply a reduction we don't need to make in the fall. We might be slightly over budget, but that's not the worst thing.
I personally prefer the idea of deferring to the fall, those types of questions, because it just allows us to think about it more thoroughly than, half hour before town meeting is supposed to start the evening of. Does anyone else have any thoughts on that?
I think the retiree thing will happen before that, but maybe the buyback thing is different than what I'm concerned about is whether they're going to raise it from 35 to 50 or 40 or 45. So, and that'll happen next week. Is that what I heard?
I'm
Next couple
hoping that it
weeks?
happens on the 7th, but I haven't had a chance to work with Kevin on the next agenda.
And I understand the other thing you were talking about, Arthur, is if 25 or 50% of the people decide to go one way or the other, that's a impact we can't predict until later on. But when they decide what they want to do with the retiree copay, then it's something we should deal with as soon as we can.
Understood. That makes sense to me. Any other discussion or comments on that? Any hands up to share? I see Kristen. Yes, Kristen.
Hello, guys. Sorry I'm late. Blythe, I was curious, was it still an option to not change the copay for some group of the retirees, but keep it for others? I know there was like some discussion around like an age requirement, or is it going back to kind of an all or nothing?
The advice of Labor Council is that it should be an all or nothing, that if you try to segregate it by people's ages, that could be considered discriminatory, and might be a little less bad, for lack of a better term, to do it by, say, the amount of time people have been retired, but they were cautious to suggest it should be an all or nothing thing. And so that's why perhaps the board might be more amenable, and I don't know, to a smaller change, so less impactful of people who've already retired.
Okay. Thank you for.
You just add that I will also ask them whether they would be interested in changing the percentage for people who haven't retired yet, so prospective retirees in the future. It won't necessarily impact the FY21 budget, but it will help impact the town's overall financial situation over time.
Thanks for the update, because last I just seen was kind of like 3 different options versus 2, so thank you.
Yep.
Okay. Also, just as a procedural matter, I am muting people. We are getting some background noise when people stop speaking. If folks could just do their best to make sure they're in a room or the door is closed or whatnot. And sometimes when you go to speak, make sure I didn't mute you. Sorry, I'm not sure where the noise is always coming from, so I do my best to mute and unmute people. That is okay. I don't see any hands up. Any other public comments from folks in the audience who were joining us? I think we've concluded the advisory committee discussion regarding the calendar coming up in our schedule. Any other, Ed, yes, go ahead. And let me unmute you. Okay, you're all set.
Thank you. I guess the discussion about getting copies of sheets that are dispersed for to look at during the budget sessions, could there be an option where the public could get them either by attaching a link to the invitation perhaps, or something where if we are interested in looking at them also, that we might have access to them?
Yeah, I think that's a great suggestion. Is there a way we can upload attachments, Susan, that you're aware of, for the town meeting calendar? Not town meeting calendar, I'm sorry, the committee meeting calendar. Let me unmute you.
I'll certainly work, I'm not sure, but I'll work with our IT person to see if he can figure out how to make that happen. I'm sure there's a way to make that happen.
All right, thank you. That's just the point.
Yeah, no, that's excellent. I also don't know if it's possible for me to share a link centrally here in the meeting. I'll experiment with that as well. Okay, any other points of business or discussion? Okay, seeing no hands up, thank you everyone for joining us tonight. I know it's a little awkward getting settled into the new way of doing business remotely. Appreciate folks' adaptation and patience as we learn. I'm sure that this will go more smoothly and we'll all get better at it. And I will see everybody next week.
Bye, thank you.
Thank you. Have a good night, everyone.
Good night.
Good night.